I'm feeling a little guilty this morning. I just got back from Florida for 2 weeks. So you may see a little bit of a tan on me. So Rick told me, don't you dare come back with a tan. And so I have to apologize if I have a little bit of a tan, but I also come back with a wee bit of a cold. So it's sort of, that's karma, as one of the kids said, right? I probably shouldn't have left. I'm also feeling kind of guilty this morning as well, because you know what happened is I asked Skylar to preside precisely in the month. She's a grade 9 student, right? Rocky Lake Junior High. I asked her to preside for her very first time, and then I tell her I'm going to leave for 2 weeks during the midst of the presiding. And I felt so terrible about it. It's just the way it worked out. But hasn't she been amazing? Give her a big hand. Give it up for Skylar. Give it up. Skylar, the Spirit in me awesomely acknowledges and honors the Spirit in you. You've been just a wonderful presider over the month. I've watched you on our video while I've been away. And Skylar's grandparents, Chuck and Kathy, where are you? Stand up where you are. There you are. Great to have you with us. Give them a big hand as well. Grandparents are here with us this morning as well, so lovely to have you. So I had planned to, this week, Jen Johnson and I are going to be co-leading a course on science and faith. All of you know that this is kind of a real interest of mine. And I think there's like 32, 33 people who are going to join us for this 8-week course on science and faith. And so I thought I'd just do a little bit of an introduction, and while we're doing that course, just so that you know what we're about, and I'd sort of talk about that this morning. So as I'm coming in the door here, just prior, having a prayer with the choir, Margaret Archibald, where's Margaret Archibald? Margaret Archibald, right back there in the back row. Margaret Archibald says, Margaret Ashcroft says to me, she says, oh, it's going to be one of those science sermons again. I think I can take a nap right in the back row. And Margaret, you did not nap during that session with the kids, did you? Now, but I am afraid that you might end up having a nap during my sermon nonetheless, because I won't be nearly as enjoyable as the kids were. So, Louise, so this was kind of sprung on me too. I'm just gonna, Louise, I do this from time to time. I want you to go to the organ again. Okay, will you please go to the organ? And I want you to do, once again, just do a little bit of what you just did at the very beginning. Just give us a little bit of that intro once again, because people were kind of chatting a little bit, and I don't know if people fully got, Rick, is this something I can do? Oh, he's translating. I just want you to play. Just play the same thing you played. This guy is amazing. He's from First Presbyterian Church in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It's a huge Presbyterian church, and he's their organist there, and he's just amazing. And Margaret, this is for you. In case you want to nap through my sermon, I'm going to give you a little inspiration right before, okay? So Louise, hit it. The Spirit in me honors the Spirit in you as well, Luis. And he's going to play a little bit afterwards as well. Luis is here from Sao Paulo. He's visiting with friends in the community, including Rick. And I said, Luis, you're going to need to invite Rick to come down to Sao Paulo and play guitar in your First Presbyterian Church as well. But it's lovely having you. Thank you for coming and being with us today. So all that by way of introduction to a fully tedious and boring sermon on science and faith with you this morning. why am I so interested in science? It's, well, just let me first of all confess right off the bat, I am no good at science, right? And the more I read about science in this day and age, the more I just stand in awe and in admiration of all our engineers and scientists who have worked their way through all that advanced mathematics and biology and chemistry, all of which I was never any good at whatsoever, okay? So it's not because I'm any good at that stuff, but I am very, very curious about it. And I'm curious about it because I've always been fascinated by and I think most religious people are, I've been fascinated by the big picture questions of life, right? Why are we here? Who or what gave birth to all of this, right? What is the purpose of all of this? What is our destiny as human beings? And I think what's happened for me, and I'm kind of a semi-professional theologian, is that our humble, yeah, Danielle always tells me humility is not your strong point, David. She says it's a good thing too. So the thing though that I've noticed in the considerations of religion in our world today is that I think religion, in the face of science, lost its sense of being the premier kind of explicator of the rational basis for the universe originally. And so religion in the world today doesn't really talk so much any longer about those big questions. It addresses more the questions of ethics and culture and social justice, and those are really, really important questions as well, right? And religion has an incredible amount to contribute to those kinds of questions. But in face of that huge mystery, religion has actually backed off a little bit in our contemporary world and doesn't address that huge mystery so much any longer. And yet, science still does. And science actually is quite enamored, and the advanced scientists are really quite curious about that huge, big picture. And the remarkable thing is that science, as we're moving into this postmodern world, has contributed what a lot of people don't realize are remarkable insights and remarkable contributions to our thinking about the really big picture, the really big questions of life. In fact, there are two disciplines that really speak to those big questions of life, and they have something quite remarkable in common. Those two disciplines are science, and the second discipline is spirituality, okay? Now, what has made science so powerful in our world today has been the utilization of the scientific method and the reliance upon experience and empirical data. What's made science so powerful, and in some ways it's moved beyond traditional intellectual rational theology, is that science says we have to formulate our theories and our theorems of the universe on the basis of our experience of the universe. And so science tries to develop empirical data, and when it has the data, only then does it propose a theory about the universe. Spirituality, and science also has a methodology, a systematic universal methodology for doing that. It's important to replicate results, to have empirical data, to be able to have third parties verify results, observations, and so on. The spirituality is also that discipline that isn't so much about rational, intellectual theory. It's about experience. And spirituality says that there is a way to actually experience the power and the energy and the mystery that's at the heart of the universe. Now, I just finished reading while I was down in Florida, a book, Carolyn, that you gave me. I finally got around to reading it. The title of the book is the one that I've given to my sermon talk, This World, The Universe in an Atom, right? And it's written by the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama believes that in order for science to progress ever further in the world today, the disciplines of spirituality needs to develop a methodology, like science develops a methodology as well, needs to develop a systematic methodology to enable people to experience. What is it that we come to church to experience? What is that we're curious about? It's God. We want to know about God. We want to experience God at the deepest level of our being. And spirituality says we can help people to actually experientially know God. But what spirituality hasn't done as well as science is develop a universal methodology that can enable people to have that experience of God. But the Dalai Lama believes, and I believe also, that as we move forward in the world today, and there's a cross-referencing and a cross-cultivation between all the religious and spiritual traditions of the world, that what we're going to see as we move forward in the world today is an emerging methodology that will really enable all of us, people who are passionate about God, to not just think about God or talk about God, but to actually develop a deeper, intuitive, experiential grasp of this incredible mystery and power that lies at the heart of the universe. So, let me give you a few concrete examples of why science and how science is beginning to contribute to the God conversation in today's world. Okay? And so, here, Margaret, are you with me? Okay, so this is for you. Pythagoras. How many of you remember Pythagoras? Margaret, did you study Pythagoras in school? Okay. Don't worry, that's what I might have said as well. So here's for all of you. Any engineers are excluded from this conversation. Any mathematicians are excluded from this conversation. Pythagoras' theorem. You all learned Pythagoras' theorem. We all learned it in grade school. What is Pythagoras' theorem? You're kind of an engineer, Val. So the square of the hypotenuse, in a right angle triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides. Why? Why is that? Let me give you another one. So Galileo, remember Galileo? Remember the leaning tower of Pisa. The leaning tower of Pisa, right? Remember Galileo, right? And so Galileo was interested in why things fall. Have you ever thought about why do things fall, right? And so what Galileo did was Galileo went up to the top of that leaning tower of Pisa, and any of you can approximate this as well. Go up to the top of a high building and drop a ball off the top of the high building, okay? Zoom! Now, what you do is you do it once, and you measure how far the ball has fallen in 1 second. 1 second, okay? And then you do it again, and you measure how far the ball has fallen in 2 seconds. And then you do it again, and you measure how far has the ball fallen in 3 seconds and 4 seconds and so on. And what you discover, I get this right. What you discover is that the distance the ball travels is a direct correlation of the square of the time that the ball has fallen. So what that means is that in 2 seconds, the ball will have fallen how much farther? 4 times as far. In 3 seconds, the ball will have fallen how far? 9 times as far. And in 4 seconds, the ball will have fallen. Now, we all learned that in school. Most of us, Terry, okay, thank you. We all learned that in school, and it's a law of nature, right? It's just a law of nature. But stop a second. Why? That is, why is there that very systematic correlation between that ball falling and a mathematical equation? When you really think about it, it's a remarkable, remarkable thing. Now, Pythagoras, back to Pythagoras. Pythagoras he lived in the 6th century BC. He was a philosopher, had a great impact on Plato and Aristotle. And Pythagoras believed that mathematics was God's kind of secret, mysterious language by which God designed the whole universe. Okay? Math is the language, is the system that God used to design the universe. And the unfolding of science in our world today has indicated more and more and more and more that the entire universe is constructed according to mathematical laws and principles. Force of gravity, electromagnetic forces, the whole shebang is based on math. There's this remarkable correlation between math and the configuration of the universe. But there isn't a single scientist, a single mathematician who can tell you why. The universe is filled with mathematical design that is absolutely mind-blowing. Pythagoras is right. St. Augustine was one of the great theologians of the early Christian church. And St. Augustine was an apologist, meaning that he was trying to convert the people from North Africa in his day and age to Christianity. And when he spoke to the non-Christian people in his world, in Northern Africa in his day and age, and he would tell them that we believe in this one God who created the universe. And the people talking to Augustine and arguing with Augustine, the non-Christian sorts of folks who would argue with Augustine, said, listen, you say that God created the universe somewhere back there in time and somewhere over here in space. But they always put this question to Augustine, but this is a ridiculous concept. It's a ridiculous concept because what was God doing before God created the universe? God must have been bored for ad infinitum, right? And where was God before God created the universe? It's crazy. What was God doing all that time? And Augustine was the first Christian theologian who said, he thought about this, he thought about this, he thought about this. He said, I have the answer for you. What you have to realize is that there was no time or space before the universe was created. God created time and God created space when God created the universe. Scientists, really for many centuries, believed that the universe existed in an eternal state, a static state. That means that the universe has always just existed. But then what emerged at the beginning of the 20th century? Big Bang Theory, right? And it is still the only credible theory out there. And the Big Bang Theory directly, and this is science now, and this is mathematics, suggests that the Big Bang, and there's all sorts of things about the Big Bang we can talk about, but the Big Bang emerged out of what's called a singularity. And that singularity also represents the beginning of space and time. Augustine was absolutely right. Augustine, this early church theologian, was right. There was no time and there was no space before the beginning of the universe. Time and space emerged. And how did time and space emerge out of a timeless and spaceless reality? No scientist and no mathematician has a clue about that. But what do we give the name for a timeless, spaceless reality? It's not rocket science. G-O-D, God. Let me give you another interesting observation from contemporary science. And this has to do with what's called the anthropic principle, which is also sometimes called the Goldilocks enigma. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. How many of you may have forgotten Pythagoras' theory, but remember the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Anyone remember that story? What happens with Goldilocks and the Three Bears? So Goldilocks is wandering through the forest one day, right? And Goldilocks comes across this house, and she doesn't know who lives in the house, and she walks into the house, and Goldilocks is kind of hungry, and she sees three bowls of porridge on the table, right? So Goldilocks tries the one bowl of porridge, and Goldilocks says, "Oh my, that porridge is way too." And then she tries the second bowl of porridge, and she says, "Oh my, that porridge is." And then she tries the third bowl of porridge, and she says, "Oh my, this porridge is just." Very good. I see you remember Goldilocks much better than you remember Pythagoras. And then the same with the chairs, and finally with the bed. This bed is too hard, this bed is too soft, this bed is just right. So the anthropic principle that science has come up with suggests that science has no other way of explaining the universe. That the universe was designed from the get-go. The universe was structured to give birth to intelligent life. Now that may not seem, the universe, think about the universe at the beginning. It's a big bang, just a crazy wild explosion. Why should a big wild explosion of heat and gas just ever give rise to intelligent life? What scientists have discovered is that the universe, just as I talked about math earlier on, the universe, in order to produce intelligent life, has to coincide, there's like 200 to 300 parameters that govern the existence of the universe as it is right now. Again, force of gravity, speed of light, electromagnetism, the whole structure of chemistry, all of it. And what science has concluded is that every single one of these parameters that was present at the Big Bang had to be precisely tuned in a very, very precise way in order for intelligent life to have emerged in the universe. If the force of gravity had been just a teensy-weensy bit weaker than it is, the universe would have ended up collapsing in on itself. If the force of gravity had been just a teensy-weensy bit stronger, the universe would have just continued expanding in an explosive state and would never have been able to give rise to constellations, galaxies, stars, and whatnot that brought matter together and that enabled planets to be formed, that enables life to be formed. The criteria had to be so precisely tuned at the beginning of the Big Bang in order to give rise to intelligent life, including human beings. If they hadn't been precisely what they were, none of us would be here. How do you make sense of that? There is this incredible order and structure and governance that is built into the very minuscule beginning of the universe that gives rise to it all. That reading from the Gospel of John that Andrea and Hannah did for us is one of my favorite readings. The writer of the Gospel of John is an incredible mystic. It says, "In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was present with God from the beginning, and nothing could have come into being that did not emerge from the Word, including life, and including the life of Jesus." Contemporary science is more and more pointing to the presence of an incredible an incredible presence of design and structure and intelligence that was there at the very primal beginnings of the universe and that permeates the entire universe even today. Sir Fred Hoyle, who is an amazing, he's one of the great physicists and discoverers of our contemporary era. And he had a hard time believing in God as well. But he once said this. Fred Hoyle was very, very involved in the discovery of carbon. And carbon, as you know, is the atom that is absolutely critical to organic molecules, to all of life, right? Carbon is fundamental to intelligent life, right? And he discovered this ratio between the strong force and electromagnetism that gives rise to carbon. And Hoyle once said, "Would you not say to yourself, some super calculating intellect must have designed the properties of the carbon atom? Otherwise, the chance of my finding such an atom through the blind forces of nature would be utterly minuscule." Of course you would. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this question beyond conclusion. Physicists have suggested that the premise that the universe could possibly have just emerged as a result of random forces is equivalent to believing that a tornado could suddenly sweep through a huge junkyard and instantly create a Boeing 747 out of that junk. It's ridiculous. Or that a monkey who had never seen a keyboard before could sit down at a keyboard and automatically create all the works of William Shakespeare. It's totally absurd. That's how absurd it is to possibly believe that a universe that is so structured with such incredible design and order could possibly have emerged from random forces. So this is why I think science is just amazing. Science cannot prove or disprove the existence of God. Okay? It cannot do that. That's not its function even. But what science does do is it reveals things about life and the universe that suggest, insinuate, just convey to any kind of rational, down-to-earth intellect that we live within a power and a mystery and an intelligence that is just mind-blowingly awesome and wonderful. And to me, that's an incredible gift that science has given us in the world today. I think we as religious people live in a time that is unprecedented in the history of the human race. We live in a time of incredible scientific discovery and, of course, incredible challenges that has posited to the world as well. But we live at a time in which the very foundations of science, it seems to me, are pointing to and suggesting that your belief and your trust and your faith in this wonderful reality that we lift up every Sunday and that was revealed to us so powerfully in Jesus is well-founded, is well-grounded. My friends, God is here all the time. Namaste. Amen.
When he did. Let us pray. Loving God, our hearts are with those in Cape Town, South Africa this morning, dealing with the extreme water crisis and drought. We pray that surrounding countries will find your love within their hearts and aid all the South Africans through this terribly difficult time. I hope that this drought will be eye-opening, showing people that this could very easily become a reality for our entire world. Amen.
Our closing hymn, O World of God. Let's rise and go out singing together. O World of God.
In the words of Joseph H. Taylor Jr., a scientific discovery is also a religious discovery. Our knowledge of God is made larger with every discovery about our world.
Friends, before Luis is going to play, I just suggest don't give me a hug at the door this morning, please. We'll just do the little hand thing, okay? Diane doesn't want any more pastoral care than she's already got dealing with us. So in case I am slightly contagious, just a little hand thing will do. Thanks. Luis, let's play.